I'm here with Brady of the Conjurer to talk about the new record, Unself, out October 24th on Nuclear Blast. First of all, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me about the record. And let's get right into it. How was it for you, the overall roadmap that brought you to this album, specifically when you compare with the previous two?
I think this is kind of night and day different. I don't think we've ever made a record like this. We've never, I mean, okay, so to give you a bit of context, like for our last record, it was made in COVID. It was made without us really getting a chance to be in a room together before recording the album. Everything was kind of closed off and separate and claustrophobic. And I feel like a lot of that really reflects in the sound of the record. So for us, this record came about as a bit of a reaction to that. And it was a chance to go, okay, what how do we actually want to make a record? Because it's not under those circumstances. So we gave ourselves more time and more space and, put a real focus on getting in the room together and playing the material and demoing it and getting like a real tactile feel for it and really giving the album a sense of space and making it feel a bit more organic. And we've never been in the position to really know what we were doing making an album before. It was our first album where we were just happy to be there. Then it was our second record where we were still learning but then also in these really weird circumstances. And now kind of third album, we went in prepared with the right amount of time, knowing what we were doing. And I think, yeah, it's the first time we've made a record that I can be completely proud of, kind of front to back.
My experience listening to this album, and this is where I want to get your input because maybe you have a completely different experience, maybe you have a completely different view. But for me, listening to the album, I normally come into a record looking for a path, looking for a journey, a sense of direction in terms of where the album is trying to take me. I didn't
Yeah.
get that from this record whatsoever. I was like, this album does not have a sense of path or a sense of direction. But when I look, normally that would be a problem. But then when I look at the sound experience that you guys created with this record, the album is incredibly immersive, almost like musical quicksand, if you will. The more you listen to it, the deeper you find yourself in it. And for an album like that, I felt that, at least for me, not necessarily having a sense of where I'm going became less important than enjoying the moment in which I'm in, which was every single song. So it's an album that presents itself in a very different way, but still allows the listener to get the most out of the listening experience. Do you have a sense that the album lacks that direction, but it makes it up in terms of the overall, perhaps, atmosphere that it creates?
I think the lack of direction thing is interesting because, you know, we're not a band that has ever really settled on one particular sound. We never, from when we started, were like, we want to be a doom band, we're gonna write doom music, and kind of that's it. It's always been wanting to take different ideas, take different subgenres, and like not really think about genre. Like that's not a conversation or a word that is ever used when we're writing or creating music. It's more about what is the initial idea for a song and how do we kind of expand on that and make this individual song a complete unique thing that sparks joy or sparks interest or does something unique for us. So I do think that when you then collate nine songs that have undergone that process, yeah, I can see that the record can feel musically a little directionless. But for me, I think that the kind of overall themes of the record and kind of the lyrical sensibility, and then also Danny has a very unique voice in terms of their songwriting style, and I think those things really tie what we've done together. So I actually think this is the most cohesive record we've ever written. Maya was written over, six, I guess the first 4 or 5 years of us being a band, we were kind of writing all the way up to the studio. Pathos was written under these weird circumstances. So Unself feels like the first time we had the a situation in which we could write a full record and gave ourselves time to kind of tie it together. So I think for me, it is it is a journey as opposed to a specific concept. But I think anything we do is gonna be that. It's gonna feel like that. I can't see us ever writing something that um feels I guess cohesive in a more traditional way.
It's funny you say that because even though I just said what I just said, when I was listening to the album, starting off with Unself and then closing off the record, the two songs that become the what do you call it, the bookends of
Yeah.
the record have a lot of similarities between them. So the album, while not necessarily, at least for me, gave me a clear path from
Yeah.
one song across all of them. The fact that the album starts and finishes in a very similar tone
Mm.
helped. It helped bring it kind of all together as one. Did you guys have that in mind when you were building this album, that those two songs played an important role in framing the record?
Honestly, they were both kind of quite late additions. The first time I heard kind of any ideas for the final track was kind of October last year when it was the end of our pre-production week, kind of our first pre-production week, and Danny was like, "Hey, I wrote what's kind of like a 4 minute doom song. Um, what do you think?" And I was like, "Oh, the chords are nice. Like it's cool. Like I'm into it. Kind of sounds a bit like Paul Bearer just from the initial ideas." And then it wasn't until we were in the studio and the idea for the intro came around, and then a lot of the lyrical themes got brought up, and it became quite obvious that these were going to be linked, and it was going to, I think that really informed the flow and the kind of vibe of the record. Like once the This World Is Not My Home was written and we had those lyrics and kind of the concept for Unself and how it was all going to tie together, that kind of became the framing point for everything else we did. So um it was funny with them being such late additions to the process that, we'd been working on the record for a couple of years to then really becoming the thing that reframed the whole album. I think it's so important what those songs do to making the record what it is. Like I'm so thrilled that we kind of made it work, and the real tricky bit was getting the track listing to the right length. And then yeah, with any Conjurer record, typically we're writing longer songs, and so having to decide what's going to get cut and what's going to stay. And a 2 minute intro song and the interlude, a play in the middle, could have been cut for another song, but we felt like they were so important to what the record was saying that it's those kind of tricky decisions that really define what the album is. And I personally think we made the right call on them.
I agree with you on that. And Unself is such an interesting, I'm trying to choose the right word here, such an interesting opener. Because when
Yeah.
I was listening to it in the car, and I press play, and my wife is in the car and she's listening to it, and then when it switches off from that country vibe, because it really starts off as a country song, so when it
Yeah.
switches off, she's like, "I think something happened with your Bluetooth connection." And I was like, "No, no, it's still the same song, it's still the same record. You're totally fine. Don't worry."
It was definitely a real curveball and not how I had no concept that we would ever start a record with something like that. But that was another thing that Danny had the idea for it and had kind of loosely talked it through and had even shown us a Guitar Pro tab of that song. And I was like, I get the second half, but like this like minute of just acoustic guitar strumming, like what is that? Like that nice chords, but it doesn't do anything. So we tracked it when we were doing pre-production, and we were just like, Danny, just go in the booth, record the vocals, because like that is gonna
Oh,
show.
hold on. Originally was no vocals on that?
Well, there were gonna be vocals, we just hadn't heard them. So we were
Okay,
like,
okay.
what is this? This doesn't make any sense. And so yeah, they went in, did like a one take through of the intro vocals, and I was just like blown away. And that take is, I think, pretty much what we used on the record, is that first ever take from pre-production. And I was like, yeah, there is no way that this record happens without this song now. Like it just felt so special and, you know, unique for us. And as soon as we do something that is unexpected and gets me so excited and feeling so passionate about the song, I know we're doing something right, you know?
Yeah, and then like you said, this world is not my home, closing off, bringing some of those influences that we heard in the beginning and Unself, like those two songs really box in the record perfectly, in my opinion. I think they are not only the perfect songs, they're in the perfect spots in order to really complement the overall album experience. I felt the album very dark, which is not necessarily something unexpected. But what I thought was really interesting is that you guys were able to draw darkness out of different elements, out of different places. Because normally when you associate, not very often do you associate clean vocals with darkness. Maybe a little bit of a haunting aspect in terms of how they're delivered. But I thought you guys were able to bring this sense of darkness out of heavy elements, but also out of light elements. It was almost like a Jekyll and Hyde yin and yang aspect that the album had, but always with a sense of darkness surrounding it. Was that the main focus, to create that unbalanced balance?
I don't know if that was a particular intention, but I definitely think that, you know, clean vocals are something we've always wanted to do a little bit more of. Neither of us are kind of naturally confident singers. So on the last album, we barely had enough time to get the thing finished, let alone kind of start experimenting with other vocal styles. So on this one, we started doing vocals from the first week, and really every day was like, right, let's, put the instruments down and do a couple of hours of vocals and just try some stuff out and really give ourselves time to flesh out ideas, but then sit with them for a few days and listen to them and, discuss it really in depth. So I think that allowed us to get far more in depth with the vocal takes, far more in depth with, where we can try different vocal ideas. And I think that is what really resulted in that kind of, I guess it's just more of a split of vocal techniques, in my opinion. But yeah, I've described the record as mainly sad to people that have asked, and I think for me is what I get from it, because it's not the most evil thing in the world, and it's
Mhm.
not brutal. It's not any of those things that you would typically assume with really heavy music. But for me, the album just feels so sad. And I think a lot of that comes from the emotion behind the songs and kind of the vocal delivery. Um, but yeah, I'm really glad that the clean vocals came out the way that they did, because there's a right way and a wrong way to do it,
Mhm.
and especially for a band that have not done a lot of that before. There's like one quote unquote big chorus on the record, and even then it's not repeated. Like we're not a band that is kind of leaning into traditional song structures. So yeah, I think it's been an experiment, but it's something that I'm really happy with, and I think that we really hit that balance nicely. And yeah, it's definitely gonna alienate some people, and I think it's gonna be really exciting to some people, and I'm yeah, really intrigued as to how people are gonna take it.
It worked for me. You use the word sad. For me, I use the word dark or despair. There's a lot of despair
Yeah,
on this record, and for me, the clean vocals magnified the despair and the darkness that the harsh vocals and the heavier sound is providing. You know, you cannot see light unless you have darkness. So
completely.
I believe that the dynamics that you guys created with the vocals allows you to better see that darkness through those clean vocals. Those clean vocals create more of a pedestal for everything else to feel even more opulent, if you will. And I thought was also really interesting because the dynamic between the cleans and harshes, it was interesting for me because the harsh vocals was almost like your exteriorization of your feelings, of your emotions, like when you're angry and you're yelling like if you're fighting with someone, that's kind of like the emotion that you have. And the clean vocals was like almost the silence in a discussion. When you're having a discussion with someone and it's a heated argument and the other person decides to just be quiet or you decide to be quiet, sometimes that's even worse than having someone yell at you. And I felt like you guys achieved that perfectly with the clean vocals on this record.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's like a really nice way of putting that into play. I am definitely gonna I'll pass that on to the band because that is such a yeah, I that feels right to me. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the whole album has this feeling right in terms, like you mentioned the word organic before. The whole record feels very organic. In the studio, did you allow it to be organic, or you also went into the weeds a little bit since you had the time and
We
looked at every detail?
we always go into the weeds more than we should. However, there was like a real kind of emphasis on letting things feel natural. So when we were writing, if there was a guitar part that just felt awful to play, we'd be like, all right, how do we change that to make that more comfortable? Or how do we change that to make that feel fun to play? And so even with vocal takes, I remember doing I don't remember what the line was, but I was doing a line and I kept doing the wrong lyrics and did it like 5 times, kept doing the same wrong lyrics. And then we were like, well, if that's how it feels like it should be, let's just change the lyrics. And we as long as it doesn't, massively change the meaning of the line, but things like that, little accommodations to make the record feel more natural to who we are and what we want to do was something we'd never done before. We would have bashed our heads against the wall trying to play this perfect thing that feels horrible and you don't enjoy it and it doesn't matter because it's the perfect bit of song and we kind of let a lot of that go um on this record. And yeah, I do think that's translated. And something about the band that has been a big hallmark of our history is the arguing over riffs. So typically we would write everything instrumentally, tab it up on Guitar Pro, and so when we went into the studio, every second of music was perfectly written and tabbed out. So you knew exactly how it had to be played, all of the above, and there was kind of no room for deviation. On this one, we wanted to have a bit, and I guess really the way we would get to that perfect tab is by arguing for months over tiny little sections of music. There would be one note in a chorus that would be people would be, threatening each other's lives over it. It has to be, fret 3 instead of fret 4. Like it is like the most important thing in the world. And so for us, getting into this space where we were playing more together in the room and kind of working on things more together, by the end of the studio, decisions were really easy because most of us were like, yeah, either of these options is good. I said more times during this month, I don't mind, do whichever you prefer. I said that more in that month than I have in the previous 5 years, I'm sure. But just because the whole atmosphere around the recording was so much better and more creative and more organic that we were just on the same page kind of naturally. So yeah, process wise, it was so different and so positive for us, I think.
I know you said that all three records had very different upbringings, if you will, because they all had different circumstances surrounding them. Considering the output of this record and how much more fun it seems to have been, is this something that you guys now are going to take with you into future records, or the door is open for changes?
We actually have talked about this all the time. Every few years we'll talk about how we want to do it. And, some bands will find a producer and a studio, and then that's them set for life. And they'll do 10 records there, and that'll be it. Or you get people that will find someone for a few albums and then move on. And we kind of always thought we would be a band that is a different producer and a different studio for every album, and we would just keep hopping around. And I think part of that was because of never feeling quite happy with the finished product. I feel like now we actually know what we're doing. We've made a record that really ticks all the boxes for us. I would like to at least one more time do this again and see how it feels to go back into this kind of really positive, familiar environment that we kind of built for ourselves on this album, and to go, okay, now we know that the environment is a given. What more can we do with the music, and where can we kind of really take things moving forwards? But we're a collective, we're a partnership. The four of us are gonna come to some decision on what we want to do. The music may wildly change. I have no idea what we're gonna do, but as of right now, I would love to go and record in the exact same place with the same people. Joe did an incredible job kind of with production. I think Katie smashed the mastering. Everyone that we've worked with kind of around the album has been wonderful. So I feel like we're in a really good place for and a really stable place for the first time. So I'm hesitant to try and change that too quickly.
One last question for you, and that is with the album coming out just around the corner, October 24th on Nuclear Blast, what are the plans for you guys following the album release?
So we go straight out on tour in Europe and then the UK a few days after the album comes out, which is very exciting. And then we are basically trying to get out and tour the rest of the world. We're working on the US at the minute. We're working on Australia and Japan. We're just really so keen to share this album with people and to see how many shows we can play because it is as many as possible right now. We're also working on, so next week we're doing an album launch event a few days before the record comes out in London. We're doing a collaborative beer with Queer Brewing in the UK, which are a trans-owned brewery that we're very good friends with. So, we're working on some kind of non-music things that are just really for fun and to kind of do cool stuff with people we're friends with. But yeah, it's just getting on the road. We will be doing some festivals next year for sure. So it's really just yeah, I guess as much as we can is what we'll be doing.
Well, from the sounds of it, 2026 is going to be busy. You're going to finish off 2025 on a busy note, and then 2026 will be busy as well.
That's the plan,
At
yeah.
least that's what I'm hoping for you guys, because this album is really interesting. You guys created a very out of the box. I mean, you guys always create out of the box records, but this one is even further out of the box in a good way because it's
Yeah.
it's it's challenging for the listener, and I think when music is challenging, it really asks a little bit more, demands a little bit more of your attention. And this is not one of those records that you can consume as fast food. You have to really you have to give it its time, not just press play and go vacuum the living room or some shit like that. You won't get the record if that's what you decide to do. It'll be like my wife thinking she was listening to a country album and then turns out to be it's not. So she was bitterly disappointed, I must say.
Hey, I'm sure we will bitterly disappoint many people. So
No, I think
yeah.
you guys did a phenomenal job with this record. Brady, thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah,
I really enjoy listening to you guys, and I really enjoy having this conversation with you.
amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And before you go, is that a Napoleon t-shirt as in like the band from the UK?
No, it's actually a band from Toronto named Napoleon.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
I was like Napoleon in the UK were like a metalcore band that were they split up in 2019. I was like, there is
Yeah, and
no
this
way.
the band in Toronto is also a metalcore band.
Ah,
Maybe they picked up where the guys in the UK left off. I don't know.
yeah, maybe. Oh, that's amazing.
That is
Thank
funny. That is funny. I didn't do it on purpose. I had no idea. Take care,
yeah,
man. All the best.
appreciate you. Talk to you soon. Have a good
Bye.
one. Bye.